This was a hard one with my sister, guys. If you see me a little awkward, sweating, mumbling, interrupting, I've never had to do this with a family member, but it was great. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Iris Global Green Room podcast. We are here live. We are back. We are live in the studio. This week I have a guest that I'm just beginning to get to know, on a heart level. So
heart to heart.
Don't do that.
Let's have a heart
Just
to
stop.
heart.
You don't do that. This is Emelyn Hart. One might notice that we share the same last name. One might also notice that...
do we look like?
I don't know. Do we?
People say we do.
Maybe. Emelyn is head of family care for all of Iris Global, which is a pretty big deal. So your job is to take care of missionaries, make sure that the family is being cared for. And she's also my sister. Older or younger?
We'll let them just...
She's older. They don't need to decide. I can tell them. Older sister, just by a little bit. And so we work together. You were a missionary. Just a little brief overview, just to get the wet the whistle, one might say. This is going to be a fun interview.
Yeah,
I don't do this with family. I don't.
No, is this the first time?
Is this the first?
It's our first time doing it for sure.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys are going to come on a journey with us as we journey together. So, M was a missionary in Mozambique for 13 years, 12, 13, give or take.
Yeah, about.
And then a few years back, just recently, moved off the field, living here in Redding and managing the team. How are you, Em? What's going on?
I'm doing well.
Yeah?
Yeah, I am.
So why did you force me to do this interview with you? Like, what was behind it? Did you just want notoriety on the web?
I wanted
on the
a
internet?
little bit of the spotlight, really.
No. Seriously, when you were like begging, hey, Will, bring me on your podcast.
Yeah, I remember that vividly, that begging session.
The goal was to edify yourself, bring glory to your name. Okay, well, we're off on the wrong. We're not doing this well.
No, just rewind.
Reverb it, and let's go. So you currently run and you take care of the Iris missions team and ministry team.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Sort of.
First of all, up into this, yeah.
Okay.
You can pull it towards you. It's got a thing. It adjusts.
I want to lean back. Okay.
Don't.
I have really the privilege of running with all of our missionaries, all of our leaders around the globe, with an amazing team. I don't do this by myself at all. I have an amazing team. And our job is to support them. What do they need to be effective and healthy and thrive on the field so that they can do what the Lord has called them to do? And that's really the heart behind Iris Family Care, is that we support every member of the Iris Global family.
Okay, so let's do this, because I think when people think of Iris, right, they think about who we are, what we do. What I would like for you to do is paint a picture of how it works. Like, why would we have family care? Aren't they off just on their own? Do we control all of our bases? Like, I would like maybe take a moment, paint a picture for the average listener. It's been running with Iris for years. Mm-hmm. And paint a picture on how it's set up.
That's a good question.
Go for it. No, give it a go.
I think we're trying to figure that out even now as we grow and we change. But we are a network of several locations, and each one is run independently. We don't have that like authority supervision over each of those locations. So what family care does is provide a support to them, not at all a control. And with that location leader, hopefully complementing what they're doing to take care of missionaries.
This is great.
Okay.
Why? So why is it set up that way instead of like how most people would think, like you would tell them what to do?
Well, that's not how we're set up as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a very centralized traditional sending organization.
Mm-hmm. So compared to, as you've looked at different organizations, like compared to, YWAM, we look similar, or compared to the navigators, like which,
Yeah.
as you've been studying this and we're developing how we take care of our network or our group. It's not a network. It's just our family.
Our family.
How is that a train?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I did a few years ago when I was just learning about member care is what it's called in the missions world.
Right.
We call it family care. I went to a training and the host of that made a comment to me like, "Oh, you have a pretty unique organization and it's going to be kind of tough to figure out how to provide member care because we don't have that traditional
Right.
centralized structure."
Right. Top down.
Top down,
Right,
no.
yeah.
It's people are really free to run and do the ministry that the Lord's called them to do. So we're trying to figure out the best way to provide care for that within our unique structure.
Right. So as we're figuring it out, right, you get put in this role right around the same time that I got put in a role.
Yeah.
Right. So you become head of family care. We don't even know fully what that means. Leif Hedlund. Okay, so as far as the structure goes of Iris, we're an organization of like we are a loose knit organization of a family. We don't look at ourselves as just authoritative, right? Where everybody fits in a box. I love that about Heidi and Roland. They're run free, go do what's on your heart, and you get put in the place to manage those hearts. Not manage isn't the right word. To encourage, to help in the best way that we can those hearts, and you're basically creating this from the ground up.
Yes. So like you said, we got put in our roles about the same time, or offered our roles about the same time. And when I was originally offered this role, VP of Family at the time, and we've since changed it to VP of Community, it was to take care of children and families that we minister to. So you're thinking nationals in the countries where we're located, speaking into best practices about how to care for children and things like that. I didn't quite understand what that meant or what that would look like. And during that conversation with Heidi about this job, I said to her, "Oh, but you have it. What about taking care of our Iris family? Like, is that part of it?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, go for it." And at the time,
I didn't know that that's how this morphed, but yeah.
Yeah, and I actually said, I brought that up and I said, why don't you give that job to these people? And she said, "Oh, no, you do that and bring them on." And I did. I brought them onto the team and they are running it. So that was not a premeditated comment. It just came out. And so from there,
just keep going.
From there, I just dove into, after I kind of wondered, why did I say that? What does that look like? And really started Googling, how do you take care of missionaries? Like, you guys, I don't have a background in this. I don't have, outside of at that point, being a missionary for about 10 years and didn't even know that really was my heart. I just kind of dove into researching what that looked like, and jumped into some trainings, and I'm still learning quite a lot.
Right.
So that's how it
So
evolved.
as you've done this, what are some of the things that we were just lacking that we've begun to put in place to help our teams out around the world? What are some of the things that you just have immediately begun to set into motion?
Well, we were lacking much, unfortunately. But what we first did was really strengthened our communication with our locations. We did have that. There was an effort towards that. We brought in a team that was their focus, was to communicate with locations, build relationship, and then also it's not just us. It's not just Iris Global's family care team that can pour into locations. They can support each other. Their best support is the Children's Center director in Malawi can better support, in some ways, the Children's Center director in Argentina, than I can. So we really made an effort to increase communication of our team with our locations and then with each other, doing gatherings, creating ways for them to communicate, like our WhatsApp group. Sort of silly, but it really helps.
It's amazing. I used it to release some news throughout all of our leaders. Like that communication is so important. One of the things that you did, you just mentioned it, and when I came on, you and I started dreaming. We said we have to do all Iris gathering, right? Like we were going to try to do it once a year, where we just bring the whole crew together. We realized that's very hard because we're spread out around the globe.
Yeah.
And so we switched to every other year. I don't know if this is interesting to people, but I think this actually shows what's going on behind the scenes, right? Behind the logo, as you see all these people working. Because what Emelynh really is doing is she's pastoring, like she's trying to pastor a group of crazy pioneers in one sense. And it's such a unique, incredible. It's such a unique job. And so we realize that we need to bring people together, right? Like we're stronger when we're together, especially if there isn't that top down, like we're telling everybody what to do. That time of gathering and being family, being a community, encouraging each other was so important. So all Iris gathering, which has been every other year.
Yep. And in the off years we shoot to do regional gatherings.
So talk about those two things and why, and how those play out.
Yeah. So gatherings are such an important part of our Iris family life and culture, because it brings people together. It gives them a pause from what they're doing on the field. So hopefully that during that time they're filled and refreshed. They hear teaching and vision and encouragement from each other and from our leadership. We have a lot of fun. Yeah. Right? You can speak to that.
We do fun. I got videos of Heidi playing dodgeball. I think they've gone out. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do fun. And we have taken cornhole as like the national sport of Iris and our bases. And we challenge each other, and it gets pretty competitive.
It does.
And I bring cash, right? You can get a missionary. You wave a couple $100, and man, those nice, sweet, soft missionaries become like pit bulls and competitive.
They're
and it's one of my favorite things to do.
It's a lot of
cash prizes.
And fun, fellowship, worship, ministry, and also we try, especially at our larger annual global gatherings, rather, we try and do some teaching on pertinent topics to them. So leadership, finance, conflict resolution, communication, anything that we feel like would be a good that they're asking for or we're noticing would be a healthy topic to discuss. So those are, and usually those gatherings are about a week. And we do those, and we hope to have as many of our family leaders and missionaries come to those as possible.
Our last one, because of COVID, got shut down.
Yeah.
We were going to do it here in Reading, but we shifted.
Yeah.
We did an all online Iris gathering, and it really was spectacular. We did games, Iris games, where we competed bases against each other. And it's amazing. Like if the bases don't want to opt in, they don't have to. But to see the creativity, like just so you guys understand, like we did some stuff like, hey, bake a local dish, right? And have your local staff judge it. The videos, the editing, and maybe we can even throw up a couple snippets of that, because people, they only see the outside ministry stuff. They don't realize that we have people on our team that were like acrobats in the circus. We have people that were professional
in doing
basketball players. Like we have people that were professional musicians before, and they're laying that all down. So it was just over the top.
Yeah, and the beauty of those games too was also that it in the midst of a pretty stressful year, right? 2020 was pretty intense, and especially for our locations, as so many of them also went into lockdown and had to pivot all of their activities. It gave such an outlet for them to unify and have fun together and kind of pause from that chaos. And then they shared that all with us in their submissions, and everyone got to see each other's submissions. And it was so much fun. We had judges that judged all those submissions, and we came out with winners, which was pretty hard in the end to decide.
It was hard. So just so you guys know, we almost all the stuff that we're talking about, the cash, all this stuff is stuff that really people donate to us during the time. So we try to do as much as we can with as little as possible. And I've watched you really steward that so well. But people, they came in and they helped out. I had one amazing donor heard about it, and he's like, "Here, I'll give $5,000 for the cash prize." So the winners actually walked away with, I mean, potentially months and months worth of operating costs, and they bought vehicles.
Yeah.
What did the winner do? The last one? Did they? In Port-au-Prince.
They had a few weeks previous to during that gathering, they had met a woman who had been, by chance, by the Lord, who had been in a pretty serious accident, and they helped her to the hospital. So they used their entire prize money to pay for her operation and hospital services.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
So you get to hear frontline best stories, the hardest stories as well, right? What have been some of the highlights since you've come on? The stuff that you've seen, like what are some of the highlights of the last 5 years as you've come on?
Highlights. I think anytime you hear a testimony of the Lord breaking into a desperate situation, any salvation is always precious. I can think of one location that is really going after just evangelism right now. They've pivoted from different programs that maybe were feeding programs or education programs, and they're really going after evangelism and seeing so many people saved and set free and just baptized. And that I love that, the simplicity of that so much. And on the other side of the globe, the testimonies of multiplication. We have one, I think this was in the past year. One of our locations was handing out toothbrushes in the village, and toothpaste and they multiplied. They didn't have enough.
I didn't hear this.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a few Where was this?
That was in northern Madagascar.
Oh, I do remember that.
And she didn't have enough for and they just kept handing them out, until every house in that village received one, a toothbrush and toothpaste.
It's crazy.
So I love those really beautiful, simple stories of the gospel in action.
We have so many amazing missionaries on the ground, leaders, and it's not just the leaders, but there's also there's missionaries underneath them. And how do you get involved with the lead, like a base leaders missionaries, or are you more like hands off for those guys? Those guys take care of them. You're mostly taking care of leaders, or are you like doing whatever you can to help everyone?
Yeah, truthfully, we're still trying to figure that out a bit. We primarily interact with leaders, but we say to those leaders, listen, we have access to different services for yourself and for your team. So if you have someone on your team that needs support, we'll do whatever we can to help them and complement what you're doing to care for them. It is so important that leaders care for their missionaries as well. So we don't want to come in and provide a way that would replace that care, but how can we support you in caring for your missionary? And we do have resources like connection to counseling or professional services that they may not be able to have themselves. So it's okay for a missionary on their own to reach out to us as well. Chances are, if that happened, I would then contact their leader, talk to them about discussing that with their leader first.
So we hear the good, but you also deal with a lot of garbage, and you hear a lot, you witness a lot, you get involved in some pretty crazy situations. Going from a full-time missionary, to actually really seeing a lot of the chaos. Like we have missionaries that have been attacked. We have missionaries that have been, marriages are falling apart. We just in everything in between. How have you made that transition from, man, I'm just a missionary, mom on the field, to now you're speaking into some really chaotic situations where we have to give people real help. What's that been like?
Well, I think I carry my experience on the field into this role, which was incredible, but also not easy.
Yeah.
I was attacked on the field.
I totally forgot about it. You can't show people.
No, I'm not going to show.
Em has like a 4-inch scar on her shoulder.
Yeah, on my arm.
She doesn't tell the story well, but You want to tell the story? Because you've experienced.
I know. I don't. I guess I don't tell it well, but I don't.
So Em was this. I don't know why I'm smiling. I
know.
just know
it
that
was
afers.
brutal. You were there.
I
you
wasn't
weren't.
there.
I'm
I
sorry,
wasn't
you
there.
weren't there. Which, incidentally, like we served together on the field
Yeah.
for a few years,
We did. We did.
which was fun.
And we got some stories too. But Em was walking between our old base and our new base, which is maybe, I don't know, 15-minute walk.
Yeah.
And like you said, like clouds got dark.
Yeah, it was a bizarre situation.
Explain.
of
Tell the story.
course. I was walking with another missionary between our bases. It was still light enough to walk. We weren't supposed to walk in the dark, and we knew we'd make it. But a storm rolled in, and the sky got really dark really fast. It just started pouring rain, and we were both attacked by a few guys that were walking at that same time.
Four guys?
I think it was 3.
Okay.
And it happened very quickly. I had a bag, so they wanted the bag, and in that process, I got cut.
Yeah, you're not telling the story well. They took out a knife. They sliced her open.
So yeah,
on her arm.
yeah.
And
I think
they were trying to get your
I'm
purse
like
off.
apologetic for them. I think
Yeah,
they
I
were
would
trying
be.
to get their bag off,
Yeah.
and I didn't even notice that though until several minutes after, when it was over and we were continuing our walk. I didn't even notice that I'd been cut in the moment.
And the other missionary, she was pushed down.
Yeah, she
guy.
just got pushed down. She didn't have anything on her, so they didn't really care, I think.
Yeah, and so then you went to the hospital,
Yeah.
and they like stitched you up over a trash can with like fishing
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, that was a pretty surreal experience. It was my first. I was maybe 6 weeks onto the mission field. Like,
Really? It
I
was
had,
that early?
Yeah, I had just arrived. I was barely like. There's so much going on in that transition to the field, and so it was definitely a surreal. My first time going to the hospital. This is a third world kind of what I would call a bush hospital, and they stitched my arm up over an open trash can, and I'd never had stitches before. I'd never really had any experience in life that was remotely traumatic.
Right.
So I got all those in my first year on the field.
And you've told me, like that was a major fear that you had. Like you never wanted, getting attacked, getting overwhelmed. And that took place within 6 weeks. And then if you don't mind me going even a little bit further, within a year, you went through one of the most traumatic things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I had a few. Yeah.
You had a bunch in that first year where basically you raised a baby. And is it okay if we talk about this?
Yeah, you can talk about it.
Because when you first came on, you were in charge of...
Yeah, so I moved to Pemba to help develop their infant housing. They're what we call a baby house. But it was really kids 0 to 4 or 5. They wanted to start being able to take in infants. So I went to develop that house, kind of train up that staff, get them ready to take infants. And in the first 2 or 3 weeks of arriving, we got our first baby, who was less than a day old. And the house wasn't yet ready to take those infants, so they lived with me. The baby you're referring to is Lori. She came, I think, 3 months. She arrived maybe in March. I got there in January. So she was very malnourished.
2.2 pounds.
Yeah, 6 weeks old. Yep. She had been living off of a mixture of corn flour and water and sugar for her first 6 weeks of her life. So she came and she lived with me for a few months, and she got healthy and fattened up beautifully, and
so it was right about the 8-month mark. 8 month. Yeah, Moosey was pregnant with Josh.
No, Josh was a baby. It was November.
Okay. Lori came in
March.
before
Josh
while
Moosey was
born.
pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so Lori was the baby. I learned how to do a lot of stuff.
She
I
was with
so
us
nervous.
all the
She
time. She lived with me for, I think, 6 or 9 months.
Yeah.
And she was part of the family.
Yeah. And woke up and she had died in her sleep.
Yeah.
And that was, we prayed for her, for a couple hours. And I remember it was one of the hardest moments I had ever gone through, just personally. Watching you go through it was even more so. And so you got attacked. You invested your life into a baby for, I think it was 8 months, six, 7, 8 months. I think it's 8 months.
Yeah, at least 6 months.
And loved her as your own.
Yeah.
She dies
Totally unexpectedly.
Totally dies unexpectedly. You had those two major things, and most people would have left the field, and you stayed. What kept you on the field?
Well, I will say I didn't plan on returning. Like, I didn't think that I would go back, or at least I really battled with that.
Go back where? Go back to
Pemba.
Okay.
Lori passed away, and then about 5 weeks later, we went home for Christmas. I think one thing that was really crucial for that helped me return was I started my healing process there. So the trauma happened. I didn't flee, or I didn't remove myself from it. I started that healing process on the field.
How did you do that?
I don't have evidence or research to back that. That's my thought, that there's something really significant about working through that trauma in the place that it happened, with the community that it happened to. Because it affected me for sure, but it affected so many people. You,
oh my God.
I mean, there was a lot of mourning that happened. So I was given space to mourn.
Papa Jolie, Shara, Heidi, all of us. It hit our whole community.
It hit the community really hard. And even with Heidi. And we were all together to walk through that, start that healing process together. I think, I will say, I don't know if you remember this, but the day after the funeral, you packed up the truck and we're like, let's go. We got to get out of here. So I did have this kind of pause from the chaos of this. She passed away 2 days later. We had a funeral. And then that afternoon or the next morning, we took off for a few days as a family.
Yeah.
So I think that was really necessary, that initial break, but came back and had to work through the healing process. And I had ministry during that. There were people visiting Pemba that did ministry, prayer time with me, some counseling, and then I went home and had more of that. And I took about 3 months, I think, at home and decided to come back. And when I came back, I didn't want to do anything with children. I wasn't fully ready.
And then what happened?
Natalia arrived right after I came back.
Let's talk about this, because I know we're not going to go too deep into it, right? But you have this crazy traumatic get knifed, right? A few months later, everything that you had been pouring into in Pemba, all the words, this was something you had wanted to do your whole life, right? You're doing it.
Yeah. I moved to Pemba certain that this was my life.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily in Pemba, but missions on the field.
Right.
Sold out. Done.
Yeah. And Lori passes.
And I thought, and that was enough.
Right.
I didn't sign up for this. That's what I remember. I constantly told myself, I didn't sign up for this.
So that was I want to say August, September, October, something like that. And then
Lori passed away in November.
Yep,
I mean, there were a series of other things that happened. I got sick that year too.
You got real sick. I thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
I really did. I thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
We've all been really sick together. It's weird being like a brother and sister. And yes, we have been very, very, very sick around each other. All missionaries kind of experience that in some form or another.
We can talk about it really freely. We won't do
amongst
that.
Missionaries, we're not going to do that on here because there's a lot there. But we've been really sick. She's seen me really sick. I have seen her really sick. I thought you were going to die. There was so much going on in those early days in Pemba.
Yeah.
But you stayed, and then fast forward December. Was it that year or the next year, the following year?
It was.
Natalia.
We were home in December. I came back, I think, in March or February, and Natalia arrived in April.
Okay.
And I was still working through that internal dialogue saying, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be working with children, you are not qualified, to the extreme of it'll happen again, And so I was given a lot of grace in that season by my coworkers, and I did continue to work, but was also figuring some other things out. So Natalia arrived. She was not quite as sick as Lori was, or malnourished as Lori was, but it was pretty close. And my co-director kind of said, you need to take care of this one.
Who was that?
Rabia.
Oh, Rabia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was wisdom.
Yes.
I didn't think so in that moment, and I refused. And she didn't give me an option. So
Rabia was one of Heidi's
yeah.
first kids
Yeah.
that she rescued in Mozambique,
Yeah.
in Maputo,
and
grew up, kids of her own, leader.
Yep.
And
came to Pemba to start that children's center many years ago. And we got to do that together for years.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Come on. So now let's just fast forward 14 years.
Natalia's 14.
Yes. And you adopted her?
I did.
Yeah.
So she lived with me for 6 months. She got healthy, amazing, moved into our toddler house. And about a year into that, of her living there, my heart was just broken. I missed her so much, and really went before the Lord and went before Heidi and my family.
We had some hard conversations.
Yeah, we did.
Single mom.
Yeah.
What's this going to do?
Yeah.
And stuff that I'd never thought about. You know, like you don't just
and
wake
I didn't
up
think
and you're like,
of
I'm going
too.
to have this conversation with my sister today.
But that's really good that we
Yeah.
did have those, because when you have the hard moments, you can reflect on the decisions you made and how you thought through this as much as you're able to ahead of time.
And that was a battle. Like that was an 11-year battle of adoption.
Yeah.
Right?
So we applied for adoption in that first year that she was with me. It took about a year, and we were denied. And the doors just closed. But she continued to live with me. And it wasn't until 9 years later that I was able to apply for adoption again. The doors just opened miraculously, and it happened very quickly in like 4 months.
Yeah. Didn't you
was
get a
approved.
word from David Wagner?
No.
I felt like you told me a
You
story. There
know
was like a
who-
word that came, and then like all of a sudden it just happened.
Stacy Campbell gave me a word.
Yes.
So I love this. When I was first starting to think about that, is what's going on in my heart, meaning I should adopt her? Is that what this is?
Right.
I was in Asia with Stacy. I was in Indonesia, and she prophesied it. And then I went from there to China, and Dina Van Hall prophesied over me about it. Yeah. And so I just took that time. And then I went from Asia to your house in
Pennsylvania?
No, you weren't in Pennsylvania yet, but we drove to a VOA.
Oh, North Carolina.
Yeah, you were in North Carolina. And I landed, and like a few days later, we all got in the van and drove to the VOA where we saw Heidi. So I told you about it there, and then Heidi and everyone, it just blessed that. Fast forward many years, the first time Natalia was able to travel with me. So the entire time those 9 years before she was adopted, I still traveled a lot.
Right.
It was part of my job or visiting home. She wasn't able to. But the first time she was able to go, we went to Indonesia.
I remember that.
And Stacy was there.
Oh my God.
And so it was just a beautiful full circle.
I think it was that trip that Heidi asked me to step in as
Yes,
COO.
that was the trip.
That was the
We
trip.
went to Bali together, which was beautiful too, because your kids were there.
Yeah.
So her first time out, she was reunited with her cousins. They hadn't seen each other since they were babies. We had time to get family time, and then
Heidi asked me to leave Global Awakening.
yep.
And
But the leadership structure
which
in place.
I know that this is the live one, so that podcast with Randy of that tension, because there's a podcast that's either coming out or is out already of the moment when I called him in Bali and having that moment of transition. But anyway, so you guys should check that out. It was one of the toughest interviews I've ever had to do. It was the hardest, one of the hardest.
That was before her adoption, and we were just able to travel. And then about a year later, she was adopted. And after her adoption, we took off. We did a lot of travel together. She was free to travel with me at that point. And then felt the Lord say, come to Redding.
Yeah, and now we're here. Mom and Dad moved out.
Yeah.
You're here. Natalia's here. I'm here. The only one that's missing is our older sister, and she's not missing. She's in Jackson, Mississippi, ministering. It's amazing, and I look at the Lord in all of it, and I just go, I took off at 17. You took off. Alex, our older sister, took off. I had kids on the field. We were all away, and now we are very much together.
Yeah. And who would have thought that?
I would have never thought it in a million years. We're very, very, very much together, and all that time that was lost, or people were like, we're losing that time. I think we've got it back with spades, and mom and dad are sewing into our kids now, and I love that. It's so great. I want to ask you a question. What would you say to missionaries that have come off the field, that have paid the price? Maybe they don't get to be with their mom and dad. Maybe they don't get to work with their amazing brother. Whatever it is. Like, they've paid the price. They're hurting, because we hear a lot of that. But I'm not just talking about from Iris, just in the missional world, right? There's a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
A lot of confusion. Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? How would you speak to those missionaries that are off the field? Maybe they were hurt on the field. Maybe they were hurt coming through Iris. Maybe they didn't have we have issues on our basis too. What would you say to them right now?
I think one thing I've been processing lately is what is reconciliation. And I think I'm still thinking through this, so forgive my mumbling. I haven't landed necessarily, but we have to primarily be reconciled to the Lord. So bringing that hurt and bringing that, your experience before the Lord is so important, not letting it sit. And it may not be that you're always resolved those matters with whoever caused them, whether it was your leader or with the organization or with another person on the field, but don't ever forget to reconcile yourself to the Lord. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it's huge. Restoration and reconciliation go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. So as we deal with issues that come up, it isn't just restoration to a position
or a person
or right.
Yeah.
It is reconciliation and restoration. Those things go hand in hand. They work together. Yeah. What are your goals for Iris right now? Like 5 years down the road, what do you want to see?
I definitely want to.
Or what do you feel like the Lord's put on your heart?
I want to continue to build what we've started to build. I think we've got a lot of areas to grow in, and a lot of things to figure out and work out. We certainly have not arrived. So what does family care look like in Iris, in our unique family? And how do we do that with excellence, caring for each other? So I want to continue to do that. I want to just develop that. Remember that. I always ask the Lord, when will I get to go back to the field? That's always on my heart. It's not for right now. I don't know, but I think down someday I'll be able to do that again.
Just make sure you train up somebody first.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I don't think that's in the next couple days, but or years, but I would like to do that.
Okay, I have one last question.
All right.
Okay? This is actually something I want to just flesh out with you for a second.
Okay.
I travel, you travel, right? We hear things. There's something that I hear constantly, which is, I want a place where missionaries can come and get restored. I want a place where missionaries can come and rest. Like people, I don't know about you, but I hear that from people. They have a house, they want to buy an extra house, a place for missionaries to come off the field when they're home and get refreshed. Okay? Normally that looks like, come stay in my house, and I'm going to sow into you. What is the best way that if people have that heart to bless missionaries, they're on the field, they're coming off, what do those missionaries actually want versus what people want to give them? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of, there's people that they're going to come and I'm just going to pray over them 5 hours a day or whatever. Yeah. Missionaries don't want that, right? They want to go sit in the movie theater or they actually want to go shopping. It's probably better, instead of buying that house, that side, building that addition onto your house, put them up in a fancy hotel instead and give them $1,000 to go buy some clothes or whatever it is. What?
I think, I can't speak for everyone. I think missionaries are different.
Right.
I several times worked into my transitions home 2 or 3 days with a friend who was a missionary on the field. And I would stop there first and it was just a buffer. It was
Yeah.
like she understood where I was coming from. She understood my experience. So she made sure that she was there when I needed her to do some fun things together, to drive me. You know, I can't drive places. I don't have. She cooked for me. Like it was as much as space as I needed, she gave,
Right.
and she was available for those 3 days whenever I needed help. So that was beautiful, and I would definitely encourage anyone to do that, to find that place you can have that buffer before you go back to whatever it is you have to go back to. Most often missionaries go home because they need to raise support,
Right.
visit churches. So they hit the ground. They've left an
Right.
intense assignment, time on the field. It's always intense. It's rarely boring.
Right.
If it's boring, I don't know.
And then they hit the itinerary.
And then they
circuit. Yeah.
they get home and they're demanded on.
Yeah.
Speak at church, minister here, or
Right.
so giving a space for some freedom to breathe.
Yeah.
I think also just listening, not giving a lot of problem solving, or just listen. That's a really powerful tool for missionaries, is debriefing, is processing for anyone, but is processing what they experience just by being able to say their experience without
Come on.
getting analyzed or critiqued or given solutions to the problems.
Yeah.
Just listen.
One of the things that I love to do, and as much as I can, is sometimes for those of you guys, you support missionaries, you have missionaries in your church, right? And you want to bless them. Like, you don't have to fly them home to bless them, right? Moosey and I have done this a bunch, where we'll send money for a husband and wife to go out to like a fancy dinner, maybe a night in a hotel, right? Like that's $200 in an international, in a country, and that's top of the line, right? And that $200 for that one night will go as far sometimes as flying them home and getting that time off the field. And I'm just saying, like, you guys get creative. These guys are giving their lives away, right?
Yeah.
And nobody asks, at least in our crew, nobody's asking for anything. So if the Lord puts some of these amazing servants, these sent ones on your heart, just sow into them. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but
I read recently about how there's a rise in missionaries taking cruise ships home, like
oh really?
as a transition, or just that's more that's happening. Not because you get that week or that 10 days where you're just waited on, essentially, where you get to have space. I think that's
we had this one woman. Oh man, I forget her name. Marissa, I think it's Marisha. I forget.
Yes, Marisha.
Marisha,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, Marisha, if you're watching. She would rent out the hotel like a at the Pemba Beach Hotel, and Moosey and I would go there for a weekend. And I remember those moments as some of like the most refreshing. And it literally was a quarter of a mile from our house. And we would go rest, relax.
And it's time away.
Yeah, time on the beach.
Yeah.
Time, I think one year she bought me a fishing trip, like stuff that we would have never done for ourselves, that encouraged us and that let people know, that we got to know and understand that those people really cared about us. Charles Stock came one year, and he's like, "Will, what do you need?" I said, "I need." Moosey was almost 8 months pregnant. I said, "I need an air conditioner."
Yeah.
And he just took money out, bought us an air conditioner. It was $500. It revolutionized our whole entire life. It
Little
changed
things.
everything. That small thing. So just if I would just ask, we get to sit back and hear the amazing stories, as well as so many other people. They hear the stories in the field, but partner with them, develop relationships with them, and even some of those guys that did those little acts, like they actually still speak into my life today. And building those relationships, it's going to go so far. So, Em, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
If people have questions, so you've actually done a ton of research. You really have. Like, you've actually done a ton as far as working with children's homes. I don't know if I know Heidi has shared it publicly, but we are actually at Iris. We're not opening up any other children's homes from this point on. Like, it's not a part
like
of our
institutional care, that model.
Yes.
Yeah.
where 40
Yeah.
kids in a house. We're not doing that
Yeah.
anymore. You've helped pioneer that.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of work. And so if people want to reach out to you, maybe they're a smaller missions organization, maybe they're just a missionary alone on the field.
Yeah.
They want to reach out to you. How can they do that?
You can contact me by email.
That sounds so boring.
That's the best way.
What about Insta? Are you Insta? Are you on Insta?
I'm not.
You're not?
Well, it's private.
You can reach out to me. What's your email?
Emelynh H at irisglobal.org.
Okay. Emelynh H at irisglobal.org. And bless you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. This was a hard one with my sister, guys. If you see me a little awkward, sweating, mumbling, interrupting, I've never had to do this with a family member, but it was great. Thanks for swinging in.
Yeah.
We should do this again.
Yeah.
And, maybe you could interview me. No, that was a bad suggestion. Oh, Corey liked it. Love you guys. Bless you guys. Thank you for watching. If this blesses you, just click subscribe, click a like button. Mm-hmm. It helps us with the stuff on all the YouTubes and all the things. So do that. And we will see you again on the next Iris Global Green Room. Bless you guys. Good job.